Well, this is it. You read the title, you read the description of the Here's the Start of Eddy and Eddy Every Episode Review Part 1. Before we talk about the actual episodes, go into some history, and hopefully this will be more organized than like the last 1,500 times I tried to record this. Anyway, this was the first Cartoon Network show to not be produced by Hanna-Barbera, except that was a lie the whole time. That the Hanna-Barbera logo was just slapped up there because they thought it would be more profitable and marketable, which is dumb. I don't really know why they would actually do that. They were all actually produced by Cartoon Network the whole time, in secret. And all of those shows before Ed and Eddy usually got 7-minute pilots through the What Cartoon Pilot Showcase program, and the most popular shows are the best shows received by the executive or test audiences or whatever. They end up getting shows, and sometimes shows will have up to like 4 or 5 pilot shorts, and this was the first one that wasn't directly produced by Cartoon Network and was instead produced by AKA Cartoons.
That's disturbing.
AKA Cartoon or whatever. Studio founded by Danny Antonucci, who previously didn't really do anything kid-friendly, so I don't know why they would even actually hire him to do this in the first place. But anyway, very early in development, it was greenlit for a whole entire season, so you can see the creative team figuring out how to make an actual show in the process of the season, so it does get better as it goes along. Most of it is super rough and unpolished and barely even good, and you can really tell that with this episode, which I'm going to assume was the first produced. And it's usually not a good idea to air your first produced episode as the first episode and have it be aired that way. Anyway, on to the actual plot of the episode. This episode is about some mysterious person being on the loose and stealing kids' stuff from the cul-de-sac, and the Eds try to find out who it is. This episode, it's not really that good, and it's mainly due to the pacing, because most of the jokes are just badly paced, and it's not really that goodly executed. And you can tell that the crew didn't actually know how to execute jokes. Yet, we expect it to be about the Edge trying to scam the kids to get fake clues or interrogate the kids to see who it is. But they just set up one trap, and then there's an interrogation scene with Johnny, which is the highlight of the episode, and he missed doing it, but then it turns out that everyone just misplaced their stuff. And the Edge, there's no scheme or scam or anything, but the Edge do have a bunch of quarters, and they get jawbreakers in the end, but there's no actual scam, so there wasn't really a point in the story. Not good. The second episode is Nag to Ed, and this is one of the rare episodes where the title actually has something to do with the episode, but not really. Anyway, the episode is about the Eds getting kidnapped by the Kinker sisters, which is a trio of girls who are obsessed with the Eds for an unexplained reason. And they make them gross sandwiches, but then they tell them to do a bunch of chores and housework, which the Eds do for some reason. There's no actual reason to do it, they just do, and then they end up getting scared away by the Kinkers, and that's the end of the episode. This really doesn't seem to be actual plot or storyline. It just seems like something that the writers just made up as they went along and not actually developing it into an actual goodly paced story. And this is probably the least annoying the Kinkers have ever been, but keep in mind this is pre-creepy, horny, rapist Kinkers. This is more of just them being annoying. This episode is just kind of boring and meandering, and nothing really happens for any sort of explained reason or anything. But this episode is significant. Well, first off, it's the first appearance of the Kinkers and the cinematic classic Fishbowl too. It's also the first mention of Eddy's brother. So, this episode is significant, but it's basically on par of the same quality of the first episode. And I wouldn't blame you if you decide not to watch this show compared to other offerings from other networks, if these are the first 2 episodes that you saw. The following episode is Pop Goes the Ed, which, fun fact, was the first episode produced, and in some orders is the first episode. So I don't know why they would decide to air 2 way inferior episodes first before this. So yeah, anyway, the actual plot of the episode is that the cul-de-sac is hosting a sprinkler party and the Eds are invited for some reason. So they sneak in and there's wild antics, but them not being invited has nothing to do with the story. And even though people obviously see them there, no one seems concerned about it. So I don't know why they would even include that. Anyway, this episode is good. Yeah, that's it. It's kind of forgettable and unremarkable, but it's actually good, which makes it better than the previous 2 episodes. This episode is also the first one to have a weird and disturbing title card, and I have no idea why they would even draw that and include it, and what it even has anything to do with the episode. This next episode is Over Your Ed, and the title card and title has absolutely nothing to do with the episode. I don't even know why they even called it that. But this episode, what happens in it is that Ed's stupidity and grossness messes up the first game of the series. Then Eddy and Double D decide to fix Ed up to make him look cooler, for some reason doesn't have anything to do with what even happened that sparked this whole idea. Then he ends up having the super raised magnetism electromagnetic powers to attract all the cul-de-sac kids, and they think he's cool and they start hanging out with him. So then Eddy devises a plan to have a cool Ed attraction of everyone paying 25 cents to see Ed jump and move around on the stage and say and do cool things and stuff. And the scam is successful until randomly in the end, out of nowhere, for no actual pre-established reason anywhere in the episode ever, the Kangaroos come in, steal Eddy's money, and make everyone look stupid and gross, and then the cul-de-sac kids don't think the Eds are cool anymore. And it's just kind of a forced out of nowhere, not even a good conclusion. I think the writers were just lazy and didn't want to actually write anything that made sense. It was developed early in the episode. There's a part earlier in the episode where Eddy gives Ed a list of cool things to say, so maybe instead of just having the Kangaroos out of nowhere to ruin the episode for no reason, they could have the Ed losing the paper, getting shredded up or something, then he just goes back to saying his normal stupid Ed food related type things, and then they end up thinking that he's uncool and moronic, so then it will be an actual resolution that has something to do with anything. But no, Kangaroos out of nowhere ruined the episode. That's just dumb. Ladies and gentlemen and others, we have finally reached the first good episode of the season. Hooray! Celebration, all that sort of stuff. The plot of this episode is that Ed is getting paid to babysit his little sister Sarah, so Eddy decides to join in along for the money. Also, Double D's there in the back, not really contributing anything to the episode at all. And this episode is good, and even though Sarah and Jimmy are kind of annoying, but it's only really for like one scene. There's like a bunch of slapstick antics. So I think it's funny and entertaining enough to overcome the usual Sarah and Jimmy annoyingness. The plot of this next episode is that Eddy's pissed off because everyone's making fun of him for being short, so then Double D decides to invent some super extending shoes to make him tall, and everything is going well. Then the Kangaroos show up out of nowhere and destroy everything for no reason, but it's not as random as an Over-Your ad, because here they actually appear earlier for like 15 seconds in an extremely pointless and dumb scene, which you could just cut out the episode and nothing would ever be changed. So maybe the crew tried to remedy the Over-Your ad issue by having them appear in the end by having them appear earlier in the episode, and it being equally as pointless. But yeah, this episode is good, and there's some slapstick antics and things until the Kangaroos ruin it in the end for no reason. Then it's bad. This is the famous, beloved cinematic classic of Dawn of the Eds, and before I get into this episode, I'm just gonna let everyone know that this is most likely gonna be in like the top 3, if not the number 1 spot of the season if I do end up doing a ranking video, which I might, depends on how lazy I am. Whatever. Anyway, this episode, what happens in it is that there's this new robot Rebel Ranch sci-fi movie extravaganza that Ed and Eddy want to see. But unfortunately, the movie is the all-over dreaded rated R, and they can't catch it on TV in its full glory, and it's all the good stuff we cut out. Also, I guess because this episode takes place in 1999 BP, apparently they can't see it through other methods, and through some random bike riding antics, they crash land the junkyard, and then their wild imaginations take over. Then they think they're in a futuristic sci-fi wasteland where robots rule the planet. This episode is funny, but it's not as funny as other episodes, but it mostly gets by on the wild imagination antics and the character interactions. So yeah, and here you can really get the feel that they're starting to actually know how to make an actual show, and the show is really starting to become more unique and like its later self. Whether the animation isn't as crazy and exaggerated as it would be later, but this is like basically the first episode where it actually feels like what Ed and Eddy would become later. Next episode is the terribly titled Fred Edgar, where the Eds get an idea to build a clubhouse and then charge the kids to come in, and then there's like 7 to 8 minutes of clubhouse building slapstick antics, but then they try to show the kids the club. The Kangaroos randomly redecorate and take it over out of nowhere for no reason, and there's slapstick antics also until the end where it just ends and there's no actual good resolution or anything. This episode is good even with the extremely unnecessary out of nowhere Kangaroo ending, but at least there's good slapstick that comes from that section of the episode. And this episode also continues the trend of having random Kangaroo cameos, even if they serve no purpose to the story. And the least egregious one of them was Dawn of the Eds, where they're just in one scene and they didn't really do anything. Even though the Kangaroos are still annoying, I guess I prefer the annoying asshole version of them than the obsessive stalker rapist versions. So even if you don't like these versions of the characters, you better cherish them because of how horrible they were later become. This unsettlingly title-carded episode is about the Ed starting a newspaper delivering route service in order to get money, and then there's a bunch of slapstick antics, and then there's a rainstorm that ends up ruining the papers, and then that's the end. And this is one of those just simple, basic plots where it's just like the Eds do a thing, and they come up with a bunch of jokes and waggis, and they're just surrounding that, which so far tend to be the better episodes instead of episode with an actual progressing plot line, which is way worse handled because they don't know how to handle pacing yet. I can easily see this plot working for an old Warner Bros. Cartoon like Daffy and Porky delivering newspapers cartoon. I can easily see that working. So I think the little bit of pacing problems that's in this short episode or whatever could be solved by cutting down the length to like 7 or 8 minutes like the other Cartoon Network shows around this time, or like an old WB, MGM, or Disney shorter. Other than the very minor pacing problems, this episode is good. This next episode is Quick Shot Ed, which is about the Eds taking a bunch of pictures to put on a calendar and sell them for money, and that's the story. They take a bunch of pictures of people, and this is another one of those Eds do a thing and slapstick antics ensue kind of stories, except that in the end, there starts being actual progressing plot line of Kevin trying to chase them down with his motorcycle or whatever he has. Then they go through the sewers and end up in the Kangaroo's trailer, and then the Kangaroo's take embarrassing pictures of them, and then the pictures of them are in the calendar for some reason in the end for no reason. The episode's good until the random ending with the Eds getting a bad ending for no reason. Well, the Eds did take non-consensual pictures of everyone and cause Ralph to be processed into a sausage, which is simultaneously hilarious and extremely horrifying. So I guess they do deserve some sort of punishment, but I think it would be better if Kevin was the one to take the pictures of them and post them in the calendar instead of the Kangaroo showing up randomly out of nowhere. Anyway, other than that, good episode. The following preceding episode, or whatever you want to call it, is not too many. Sarah has a crush on Double D, and that's basically the whole entire story and basically all that happens. And this is another one of those simple basic plotline episodes, which is a springboard for a bunch of gags and jokes. One critique I have with the episode is that the main plot is just super simply resolved. It basically kind of just resolves by itself and no actual development or growth, but I think that the comedy is good enough for me to ignore that. This episode is about the Corsair kids playing hide and seek. There's a bunch of slapstick antics that ensue. There's another one of those extremely simple concept episodes that are basically just driven by gags and jokes and allows each character to have a little comedy moment in the spotlight, except Naz, of course, because she has no character. But anyway, this episode is good, and yeah, that's it. The basically barely even existent, non-existent plot of this episode is that Eddy hypnotized all the Corsair kids into doing ridiculous stunts and acting like animals and things. And then when all the others are having a good time, enjoying and laughing along and stuff, the king could just come out of nowhere, and then there's a horrendous, stupid non-ending that makes no sense just because the writers were too lazy to even actually write anything that made sense. There's another one of those simple plot episodes, except without good actual jokes and good character interactions, just kind of the Eds messing around and doing random things. It's kind of just feels like a random half-baked idea one of the writers had, and they just really needed an episode out and they didn't have another episode out, so just had to go with that story and they couldn't figure out an actual way to resolve it. This is the first episode where I would kind of call it boring and unremarkable and uninteresting, except for the horrible kangaroo non-ending that I mentioned earlier, and when the kids get hypnotized to turn into animals, their pupils disappear, which makes it look even more gross and horrifying than before somehow. This next episode is about Eddy trying to get Double D to build up muscle, which somehow leads to a wrestling match between Double D and Plank, and later the Eds versus the Kangaroos. This is the best episode so far. This has lots of hilarious and iconic moments and great showcases for the character interactions and dynamics and stuff. I highly recommend you check this one out. That's the
That's disturbing.